throughout 3 decades, 8 feature films, yes, even a TV show, the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise has gone to some unique places and experienced all the highs and lows that you may imagine a series such as this may experience. It's gone for genuine scares, it's gone for camp and humor, and in some cases it's mixed both together, each time to varying degrees of success and varying audience reactions and fan satisfaction. But throughout all this time, one thing that has remained consistent was its main star, which was Robert Englund playing Freddy Krueger. That is until recently, when the 2010 remake came along. We got a new Freddy and Jackie Earle Haley, and it's hard to believe at this point. The movie is 5 years old. This month, April 2015, that's the 5th anniversary of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, and to date, we haven't really seen anything else from this series. I'm not a big fan of the movie. I'll tell you right away. And part of me didn't want to really kind of talk about the movie, and I've written about it. I've done a review of it on this channel, and why put myself through more? Basically, why put all my thought and effort into trying to explain why it's so bad when the filmmakers didn't even put any thought and effort into making it good. So, if you want to see a review absolutely tearing it apart, saying why it's so horrible, just ranting about it, then I'm sure there are other suitable video reviews that you can watch, but you're probably not going to find that here. Because, at the risk of sounding completely melodramatic, I find it sincerely lamentable that the movie wasn't good. Really. So I thought, for a while about wanting to do a review of it, but I don't know, time just escaped me here. I started this video review series, The 30 Years of Freddy, in November of 2014. Kind of the way I started it was I wanted to do them all like within a week, the week of the original film's release, kind of coinciding with that for the 30-year anniversary. But then it just kind of developed almost on its own, just into something a lot more thorough. I don't know, I feel really passionate about the series, I really do, so it kind of stretched out into very lengthy reviews and stretched out all these months until here we are a couple months later, where I'm still kind of leaving it hanging. So I wanted to end this series, the series review, kind of in a, I guess, more modest kind of way, more kind of off the cuff, unscripted. I don't really have, anything, I don't have a review written for the remake, but I figured to end this, I'll do this little discussion video, basically, talking about the series as a whole, talking about the remake, and talking about some other supplemental aspects to the series that complement the series. So that's kind of the plan for this video. So being as passionate as I am about the movies, of course that's kind of why I don't like the remake as much as I do. I even own it on Blu-ray here. It's always a struggle to watch. It really is. There's a lot wrong with this movie that I'm sure other people could go into detail about, but let me just talk about it a little bit, I guess. Kind of why I don't like it, why it's, in my eyes, a failure. But I guess I should touch on what's good about it first, which won't take too much time. Absolutely one positive aspect about the remake kind of came from the fans, really. When you think about it, and that's Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy Krueger. It did kind of start as a rumor on the internet, saying, a fan rumor that Jackie Earle Haley, he's going to be in the remake. Then I guess powers that be kind of thought, hey, yeah, that's a good idea. This guy could be a suitable Freddy Krueger, right? And indeed he is. It's a good rendition. Realistically, Robert Englund, he cannot play this character forever. As good as he was throughout those 8 movies, there's got to be, if you want the series to endure, you got to pass the torch. Just like, I've compared it time and again to kind of like the James Bond series. We've gone James Bond series is even older than the Nightmare series, of course. We've gone through several James Bonds, so why not several Freddys? Why not keep the series going? So, Earl Haley, an ideal Freddy Krueger, really. Um, and I think what makes his performance work is that he's not trying to duplicate what made Robert Englund's performance work. He gives it his own. He has his own aspects to it. So, kind of what a lot of people have noted, that it is a little similar to his Rorschach voice from Watchmen, which I don't see as a problem. But it's like this gruff voice. I'm gonna get you, whatever. And I think it works good. So he has this fire in him, this anger that indeed a tormented soul, this spirit in purgatory, possibly wrongly killed, would have. So he taps into that anger in a really dark way, and taps into that darkness that I think is very similar to what Robert Englund tapped into with the original film. This hatred of youth that I think is very effective. He has little subtleties to the role too. Well, maybe not too subtle, but he has that thing where he kind of twiddles the twitches or whatever. The claws kind of go around. I think that's pretty good. I think that gives him his own little trademark, his own little touch to it, which I liked. So absolutely no complaints about Freddy Krueger as portrayed by Jackie Earle Haley. The makeup is all right, because it's kind of a fuse of mostly makeup, but they, if you see some of the behind the scenes stuff, he has like the green crap on him to kind of give him a more inverted look, give it a more realistically quote look to more match what you would see as a real burn victim, I guess, which a little bit unnecessary, but whatever. So I have to say Jackie Earle Haley did a good job. Probably the only person in this movie who actually gave a shit, which is, I would say, mainly the problem. This is an overwritten and underthought movie, if that makes any sense. Kind of the big goal with this, and where it ultimately falters, is that they do try really hard to mix up the story as we know it as much as possible, to make changes to it as much as possible, so that it's something new for those who have seen the movie before, but still the same story that worked. But they fail in both respects there, because they kind of ruin what made the first movie work so well. For example, they do kind of the twist that we've seen in the original movie, where we think Tina, I don't even remember the name of the blonde girl in the remake, but we think for a little bit that she's the main character. But the difference with the original compared to the remake is that Tina, she's in the movie for like 15 minutes, then she's dead. The remake kind of drags it on way too much, so that we're partially invested in this girl, though not really, and we don't get really enough time to know the Nancy character in this movie. Both, thankfully, are named Nancy, to really care once that twist goes into play. So we're following this kind of like the Psycho principle, where we think we have a lead character, but they get killed, and it's supposed to be surprising and shocking and kind of leave us wondering, what's going to happen next. But I think they fail in that, because one, this character isn't interesting at all, and the substituted character in Nancy is absolutely not interesting. We don't really get a sense of this character whatsoever. She's not, kind of like an artsy, mumbly, kind of downer student, whatever. They do try to establish the characters as much as they possibly can in the opening scenes at the Exposition Cafe, where all the characters that are going to have integral parts are all at the same cafe as the first murder occurs. So there's all that, and they set it up all together. But I think that's a big mistake in kind of putting way too much time in a very obvious red herring. So that's kind of where we first begin to realize there's a problem. Also a problem is in the Freddy character as a whole. Again, they're trying to change the story to make it something a little bit new, to play on our expectations a little bit, which in a general way, by its very merits, I think that's something that should be done. I think that's a good idea, but they don't do it well. Nightmare on Elm Street had kind of this campfire tale about it. This child murderer, he was again kind of implicitly a child molester too. He was tracked down by all the parents of Elm Street because a technicality let him go free. They burned him alive. He comes back and kills the Elm Street kids in their sleep. That works. It's very simple. This one, they kind of give him too much of an agenda, where one, they downplay completely the child killer aspect of it, and enhance to a point of extremely bad taste the child molester aspect to him, which I think is the biggest offense of this movie. And I honestly think it's fucking despicable that they would do that. Honestly, I mean, really, come on. Not only that, but in doing that, in giving this weird story about how Freddy's a fucking gardener at a fucking preschool, molesting the kids, and the parents not even going to the police, but automatically assuming, without any proof that he's doing this, they burn him alive, blah, 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 and then that's kind of where it sets off. But Freddy's goal here is to kill all those specific kids, so they give him a specific agenda, which I think is weird, because kind of like, on Elm Street, it could be any of the Elm Street kids, could be any parent who committed these sins. But we know exactly each character who is involved in that backstory about the preschool kids being molested, and he has a checklist. So his checklist is done by the end of the movie, so there's no need to continue this story or with any sequels, and indeed that has not happened. So, I don't know, just from a structural point of view of supposedly wanting to revive this franchise for a new generation, it doesn't work, because you give him too much of a motive, and then they throw in all this stupid horse shit about maybe he's not guilty, maybe he's innocent, and surprise, he's guilty. I mean, what is the point? What is the point of that? So it's just, again, terribly overwritten, with no actual thought to it, no real themes or anything like that. Any points that it may hit on, it hits on accidentally and deflects anyway. Like, you could see this kind of working, new generation of kids, new generation of overprotective parents, where, yes, you could almost see that a parent wouldn't want to even go to the authorities, anything like that. They want a quick fix. This is a generation of, hey, my kid's not paying attention in school, let's give him a pill, let's not try and solve this, anything like that. We want immediate results, which that kind of, that could fit into this movie, but nothing really goes anywhere with that. Instead, they focus on digging up this stupid subplot about the past, and Freddy is a fucking gardener, and it's all horrible. So, I mean, really, they just completely screwed that up, and it eliminates any kind of fear where you think it could happen to anybody. But no, Freddy's trying to kill these specific kids, which I think is stupid. And it all doesn't amount to much. Same old stuff we've seen before, where the character figures out that you can pull Freddy into real life from your dreams, and she kills him in real life, and he's supposedly dead, but he's not. He comes back for a final stupid scare at the end, which is stupid. And that's another thing, of course. Anybody who would talk about this movie would talk about, of course, the jump scares in the movie, which are just so assaulting to the point. But by the end of it all, you're numb to it. You don't even fucking notice it anymore. They milk that cow for all that it's worth. Introducing this idea of the micro naps, which again, I absolutely do not contest, micro naps being a thing, but to use it as such a pathetic crutch to get false scares into the movie, I think shows complete laziness and no skill whatsoever in actually developing a scare. Because what is it? Walking down a hallway, boom, scare. You know, it's nothing. It's the lowest level of trying to scare someone. It doesn't this is a checkers movie, not a chess movie, I guess you could say. So it doesn't really go for the deep psychological scares and deep psychological fears of youth, which we've seen in the original movies, and I think they do really hold water there. And I hope that in my previous reviews of these movies that that's something that I was able to communicate and why I think it's so good. But there's nothing really to grasp on, which is disappointing. This is just a very bland and jump scary kind of movie. Nothing of substance in here, which is so unfortunate because there could very well be. I mean, the movie looks fine. Technically, it's proficient. We have scenes in the boiler room. The boiler room looks very sleek and dark and very movie-esque. It doesn't look like it's a boiler room in some school that the film department rented out over a weekend. But even that you could say is part of the charm, because this movie has the budget. But when you look at over-the-counter hardware store effects from the first movie, what did they take? They took like a sheet of rubber or whatever to create that effect where Freddy's coming out of the wall in the '84 film. And that looks incredible. That holds up today. It looks like it could very well be, an optical effect or a CGI effect. Here, they replicate that scene, and it looks like garbage. Freddy's coming out, very obviously CGI. Looks like a fucking video game. It's garbage. It's horrible. So I mean, there's that too, and how desperately they try to just wedge in as much as possible kind of the iconic imagery of that first film that made it so memorable, with no real point or no real relation to the story that's going on in this movie. So we just see images like the clock coming up in the bathtub like we saw in the first film, but it doesn't even make sense in the context of its own scene, whereas it does absolutely in the original film, because that's an actual scene. They just take the middle of that scene, which is the most memorable part, and they throw it into this new movie, and it trails off into more garbage about a scene. So there's all that. I mean, again, it looks fine. It looks like it has money. There's no shaky cam, thank God. But it was just complete, garbage. Really, really garbage. And the original films, even as bad as some of them were, I mean, they were like this playground for inventive directors to kind of work within, with no budget. And the lower the budget you have, the more kind of creative you have to be. When you start off with the big budget, you can afford to be lazy, so there's no problem there. And there's no creativity, and there's no enjoyment for the audience, which is unfortunate, which is what I experienced as an audience member, and clearly I'm not alone in that. And no one seems like they wanted to do this movie. Everyone involved seemed, except for Haley and arguably, what's the kid's name? Kyle Gallner. He's all right. He's all right in the movie. Yeah, he seems like he sort of gives a shit. But, I mean, very obviously, this is a product. This is a brand name. This isn't actually a movie. This is just something that they're throwing out to make money really quick. And indeed, they did, and it did. So, there's no real argument into the success of what they were setting out to do. But, we as fans kind of suffer. Anyone who actually thinks the series is worth a damn, thinks that art means something, and that horror films, as cheesy as they can be sometimes, can be art. So, there's that. And, even the director, Samuel Bayer is the director's name. This was his first film. Apparently he didn't even want to do it. He's friends with Michael Bay or something. Michael Bay kind of twisted his arm. You're like, come on, do it. You'll have fun. It'll give you some cred to do movies that you want to do later. And so whatever, he does it. And you can tell that the director of this movie didn't give a shit about this movie. And I think there even was an interview where he was, responding to some fan concerns before the movie even came out, by the way, not after, when everyone knew it was a piece of shit, where he said something to the effect of, oh yeah, fans, they just need to relax and get up, get some fresh air, real arrogant asshole kind of comment, where it's like, the fan base, that's why you have a job right now. You realize this is an established franchise because there is a fan base. This is going to make you money because there is a fan base. So, what a complete hack. And not even a competent hack, because at least a competent hack would know that you have to provide a little bit of lip service, like, oh yeah, don't worry, the fans are going to love this movie. It's going to be great. It's going to be really fulfilling and, tap into what all the fans love about the series, blah, 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 blah. No, he doesn't even do that because he's an idiot. Have we seen anything from this guy? Have we seen any further movies from him? Not that I know of. Hope it stays that way. I won't stand in line for any of his movies, but whatever. I'm feeling a little aggressive right now. But even Rooney Mara, she's a star. She's a big star now. I mean, even an interview came out a little bit later about how, she said, "Oh yeah, I remember talking to my friend on the phone or whatever when I got the role. I was like, oh yeah, the movie's a piece of shit, but it's going to be good for my career, so, whatever." And, I mean, I guess you can't really blame her. I mean, if you're using the system to kind of step up in your career, it worked. I mean, good. You use it. Good for you. Good for you. She's an Academy Award nominated actress now. She was great in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So, I mean, you can't really blame her in a very objective kind of way. But in the same way, this movie suffers because nobody gave a shit making it. So, there's that. What can you say? What can you say? Nobody gave a shit making this movie. So why should I give a shit? Why should I even be wasting my breath talking about this movie? But, I give credit to Jackie Earle Haley. I think the performance as Freddy Krueger was good. I thought the makeup was decent. Everything else was complete. I fucking hate this movie. Honestly. I've said that before. I don't like it. The Nightmare on Elm Street remake. It's a piece of shit. Yeah. So 5 years have passed since this movie came out. Not much has happened since. So I guess this April we can all celebrate, quote, the release of this film, its 5th anniversary. But at the same time, something else that I wanted to talk about in this video is that we also have a 5th year anniversary of the documentary, and that's Never Sleep Again. That came out around the same time. This was made well before the remake came out, so they don't talk about it in this documentary, but it was released around the same time. I think even within a week. So, on one point of things, we have, one of the worst things to happen to the franchise, one of the shittiest movies in the franchise. But on the opposite end of that, we get one of the greatest documentaries about a film series, or even a film in general, that, in my opinion, has ever been created. This, you can absolutely feel the passion. You can tell that this documentary was written, was produced, was painstakingly researched, and whoever was in charge got all the interviews. It was all done with great love for the series, that, wanted to kind of document the detailed history of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the series, which I find absolutely commendable. And being a little over 3 hours long, this is an epic documentary, absolutely great fan service, very informative, but at the same time very candid. Just everything you could hope for. And I would say, if you are a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, if you're a fan of even the first movie, you owe it to yourself to watch this documentary, to even own it in your collection. A+ fucking documentary. I love it, and I've actually watched it over quite a few times. And I do think that this isn't just gravy. I think there was a need for it, because when you think about, say, I don't know, Peter Jackson's like Lord of the Rings or Hobbit movies, or even the King Kong remake that he did, you get one of those DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever, you get hours of special features, because the studio's like, hey, whatever, document this, do that, whatever. Sell some Blu-rays with these enticing special features. With the Nightmare on Elm Street series, I mean, certainly we got some good features. For the 1999 Blu-ray set. For that time, there were decent special features. There were interviews, and in some cases, there were commentaries. Um, yeah, well, at least on the first movie and on New Nightmare from Wes Craven, and some good stuff here and there, but nothing I would say entirely comprehensive, which is what Never Sleep Again is. Entirely comprehensive. It starts off from the very first movie, outlining how it was made and everything that Wes Craven went through, his original idea, partnership with Bob Shaye. They don't really shy away from kind of the more argumentative aspects of making the movie. This is an honest and bold documentary. It doesn't really pull any punches, leave anything out. It's for those who want to know a little bit, and for those who want to celebrate the series, and that's exactly what it does. And there's some great interviews here from those involved with the movies, and again, they don't shy away from things that went wrong, things that kind of failed, particularly when it gets to some of the lesser liked movies in the franchise. They don't really shy away from being entirely candid about that, and talking about where it went wrong, why it went wrong. Maybe there was too much time, or not enough time, I should say, to get things right. Especially when we get to the fourth film, there's a writer's strike. Fifth film, there was a release date before pen hit the paper to write the script. Freddy's dead. It was like, we can't do this forever. Let's fucking end it. But at the same time, you sense that everyone involved wanted to make a good movie regardless, and tried their best regardless. That's not something that you sense from the remake. You're not going to see fucking Samuel Bear talking in an interview about, oh yeah, I want to do a Freddy movie, but we fucked up. No, you're not going to see that. You will not see Samuel Bear's confession, nor would I think Rooney Mara would do interviews talking about that movie, because what is there to talk about, really? Meanwhile, we see Heather Langenkamp in this documentary. She narrates it, actually. We see her, and how passionately she talks about her character, and how she holds it dear, and how she truly, appreciates the fans. That is, in the most cheesy way possible, that's heartwarming to me. How she truly feels that there is value to the stories that are being told. But everyone at the same time, they're candid. I guess we'll leave it at that. The funniest parts have to be with Clu Gulger in his interviews. You're like, what the fuck? But anyway, absolutely recommend this documentary. It's just fantastic. Very epic experience, and even as they go from movie to movie, they have these cool little animations, these kind of claymation animations that I think are nice, and it kind of complements it well. And if you want, if you don't want to go for the 30 miles of bad road and watch the full thing, you can kind of watch it movie per movie, and each section kind of complements each movie in the series. But again, they don't really talk about the remake that much, because at the time of filming the interviews, all that kind of stuff, it was upcoming, and so they're even candid about that little information they had on hand. Wes Craven was like, I had nothing to do with it. Nope. Nancy was like, I hope whoever plays Nancy gives it the same love and care that I gave it. Nope. Hope you feel good about yourself, Oscar nominee Rooney Mara. Anyway, but if you're a fan of this documentary, if you watch this, if you even can't get enough of the 3 hours here, this is 1428 films. In addition to this, if you want a little bit more, there is a little bit more, and it is Heather Langenkamp's documentary, which she directed herself. It is mainly about her. I Am Nancy, and I have a copy here. This copy signed by Heather Langenkamp here. I got this. This is it's like a little kind of cardboardy kind of thing, but it's kind of cool. Got this at Fan Expo last year in Toronto. She signed it. Got to meet her. That was pretty cool. And had a little chat. And before I left, it was like, I truly think that you're one of the best heroines in horror movies. You really had that strength. Blah 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 blah. She's like, well, then you're gonna love this movie. Indeed, I did. This is great too, and it is funny because it is about her going to conventions and stuff, and in a lot of ways kind of living in the shadows of Robert Englund, who, in absolute truth, I mean, if you go to one of those things, I'd never been to one of those things personally. That was the first time I ever went to one. Maybe the last. It was like kind of like going to like a theme park. You wait in line for so long, get a little thrill, and then you go back into another line. But whatever. But it's like you see a line for Robert Englund, goes around the corner, see a line for Heather Langenkamp. There's like two people. So it kind of explores that in an interesting kind of way. And even like the merchandising, and there's a million bajillion things with Freddy slapped on it, but where's Nancy? When is Nancy going to get her dues? There's one part in the documentary where she's looking around for merchandise. All she really sees is like this, kind of toy with Nancy in the bathtub and things like that. So it's interesting, and it is kind of the search for Nancy as a character and her importance in this series, which ultimately leads to a nice message about how important that character is. And I love that because I honestly think that Nancy, she's a great character, and Heather Langenkamp did a great service to her in the series and in this documentary as well. Meanwhile, in that remake, which I keep going back to, not so much, so that's disappointing there. But that's kind of the sweet and sour to it. So the sour, we have this remake that came out, but at the same time, there's a fan base out there, and documentaries are being made to kind of give them a little bit more of what they want to see. But I mean, realistically, documentaries can probably only go so far. I mean, there's a point where, you hear all the little tidbits that you want to hear, see all the interviews that you want to see, but ultimately what you're craving is more of what you like, more of the movies, more Freddy, more Nightmare on Elm Street, and even with that, say, comic books, novelizations, or novels, I should say, fan fiction, etc., etc., etc. Even that only goes so far. They're mainly about the movies, and that's where, obviously the big bucks are. So how strange is it that it's been 5 years now, we still haven't seen any kind of follow-up to that 2010 remake? It's worrying, about where the franchise is going to go. Even when you look at something like, say, the Texas Chainsaws, like even that, it spawned a prequel and another sequel, or I didn't see the latest one. It was stupid. Even that, got a little bit more more bang for the buck. Meanwhile, Freddy's sitting in the corner. That's no good. So where realistically is this series going to go? It could go quite a few different ways, I think. I honestly don't think that it's anywhere near over. I mean, there's a fan base out there. Needless to say, there's a fan base out there. Me doing this video, you watching it, fans of the series. They could possibly do a sequel to the remake. I mean, 5 years isn't huge of a gap to kind of pick up, but in order to do that, I think they would have to kind of basically disregard the first movie. Like, I'd like to see Jackie Earle Haley back. Again, I can't stress enough that I thought he was good in the movie. But I'd like to see him under a competent script, under a competent director, under a good movie, which I think he deserves as an extremely talented character actor. So I'd like to see that, but they'd probably have to disregard all the events because again, all the kids in the movie, everyone who was trying to kill was a kid that he molested, which is fucking stupid. Saying that sentence makes me cringe, really. So if they just kind of start off randomly brand new characters, but Jackie Earle Haley's still Freddy, killing a bunch of kids in their sleep, Elm Street kids, that might work. I wouldn't mind that if it's under the right talent. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Another way this possibly could go, which, let's say, walking out of that theater in 2010, I wouldn't have even considered this, but it's possible that the Nightmare on Elm Street series may find its way to television, to some kind of network, even maybe Netflix. I know Netflix does a lot of stuff, because look at all they've done with franchises, specifically horror franchises, and kind of given them a new life, a resurgence as a kind of serial program. And the good thing about those is you can make as many as you want. They can last as long as you want, especially if it's non-network or more like, say, of a flexible kind of network, like certainly like Netflix would be, where we have seen, against my absolute doubts, we've seen something like, say, for example, Hannibal, which I love. I never would have thought that Hannibal would have been actually, a decent telling of Hannibal Lecter's origins, but it worked brilliantly, and I love. That's one of my favorite shows. But meanwhile, see, it's very flexible. I mean, seasons come, every couple of months, and we only get 10 episodes or so, but still, they're really good episodes, and they're worth the wait. Bates Motel, again, I thought, what a stupid idea to do a modern day prequel to Psycho with Norman Bates and his mother. What a stupid idea. Meanwhile, it's a great show. And again, I mean, it's FX or FFX or FXX, I don't even know. They're kind of a trendy network, but they're kind of like, in a sense, HBO. Again, seasons come and go whenever the fuck they feel like, which, that kind of flexibility and malleability, that kind of works with these types of shows, really. And you name it, other franchises. You have From Dusk Till Dawn. It's on the El Rey network, also on Netflix too, so they kind of have best of both worlds there, and that reaches more of an audience. Ash versus the Evil Dead is coming to Star. Like, what the fuck? They're bringing Bruce Campbell back as Ash in a new TV show. Who would have thought that would ever happen? And even another Wes Craven franchise, Scream. They're going to be making that into an MTV show. So there's so many different ways that a horror series could find a new life, and I think something like A Nightmare on Elm Street could have endless possibilities like that, because it could go many ways. It could be as kind of a prequel, like maybe show Freddy Krueger as his serial killer days, and kind of maybe make it like even like a Twin Peaks kind of show, where dreams do play an important aspect in it, but it's not explicitly about dreams. It has kind of a surreal feel, but still with like the police procedural elements to it. I think that'd be a perfect kind of atmosphere for a Nightmare on Elm Street prequel, or they could even move it into just kind of a serial where it's Freddy, he's killing kids in their dreams, he has to be stopped. As simple as that. I think that could work as a TV show. Another way it could go, given the fact that at this point it is impossible to deny the power of nostalgia, they could bring Englund back. Give him one last hurrah as Freddy Krueger. Dump a truckload of money on his front porch. Have him do kind of like what they did with New Nightmare, but in a more straightforward kind of way, where it is kind of like one of the sequels from the 80s. Bring him back, bring other characters back, something like that. The guy, he's one of the hardest working people in show business. He's still making movies. He did, what was it, the last show, or the last something like that, the last projection show, or something where he played like the mad projector, which was his kind of big movie of Halloween last year. So he's still making all these movies, even doing like little cameo appearances, like he's done like Hatchet, in Behind the Mask, the Mask of the Legend of Leslie Vernon, or whatever the fuck. Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, that's it. One of my favorites, I love it. Sorry, I forgot the title. That could work. He's older, obviously, but, makeup it's scarred makeup. You wouldn't be able to tell that he's a man now in his 60s. So, I mean, there's that. And, I at that same expo I was talking about, I saw the guy. He's spry, man. He's like, I saw him like choking fans and like, going up to cameras and like, I'm Freddy. So, I mean, come on. Who wouldn't kill to see Robert Englund playing Freddy again? So I'd love to see that. But, I mean, the important thing is that there's many ways that the series could endure. I think it's a series of tremendous power. I think it's a series of tremendous imagination, big ideas, a little budget. That's fine. It's something that speaks deeply into our fears, whether we are teenagers, whether we're older. There's something very daunting about this serial killer that can attack you only in the dreams. And in the dreams, there's limitless possibilities about what types of fears we all can encounter, and how representative of that all is this boogeyman, this Freddy Krueger character, who has stayed in our popular culture for all these years for good reason. He taps into something. These movies mean something, and we respond in a way that I think really, truly gives us an idea of what horror can really achieve. It's more than just cheap thrills. It's more than just blood and gore. It's something a little deeper and more scarring than that, and indeed more entertaining than that. And I think the nightmare is far from over. I have like the video and audio. Can I give you like a 10-second interview?
Okay, sure.
Okay. 30th anniversary now of Nightmare on Elm Street. In one sentence, what would account for its lasting power?
The great gimmick, the great hook by Wes Craven, which is the dream, the bad dream, the nightmare. It's universal, and it's what made us an international success.
You heard it here first. Robert Englund, thank you so much.